Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So today is the 12th lecture of organic based industries. We are studying about urea phenol formaldehyde resin production and as well as application. Coming to the key concept are the contents of today's lecture. First, we shall discuss that what are urea formaldehyde resins and how they can be, which kind of materials can be used to synthesize them, and then for the resinification of these type of materials, what kind of theories can be adopted, and then we shall discuss that which kind of molding materials can be used or they can be employed or added in the reaction mixture to mold the properties of these resins. And then there is the next content that are processing and properties and application. Basically these 2 points we shall discuss in the next lecture. So from the introduction of these urea formaldehyde resin, basically urea formaldehyde resins are belong to the main class that is called as aminoplastic. So what are aminoplastics? Basically these are a range of resinous polymers produced by the interaction of amines or amides with aldehydes. When we use the term resin, basically resin term is used for a plant-based material that is solid, or you can say semi-solid, or it is very viscous type of material. So these are the naturally occurring plant-based materials, but these resins, they can be synthesized in the laboratory or industrially. So now there are a range of synthetic resins also available. So when we talk about aminoplastics, so basically aminoplastics, the majority of them are synthetic resins. So these synthetic resins are basically we call them aminoplastic because it has amino group, or you can say that these are made by the interaction of amines or amides with aldehyde. There are a range of these aminoplastic that are commonly, you can say, diversely used. Basically the most common of these are urea formaldehyde resins and melamine formaldehyde resin. These two are the main, you can say that they are very diversely used, and they have found very interesting applications, and they have settled in the society. But there are also other types like you can say that melamine phenolic resins, and also there and aniline formaldehyde resin. I mean these names are these resins are named depending upon the starting material. Just like we are talking about urea formaldehyde resin because it is formed by the reaction of urea with formaldehyde. So similarly aniline formaldehyde resin, it is formed by the reaction of aniline with formaldehyde. So in case of, there are also those resins that contain high urea type moieties. So these resins, they all belong to the aminoplastics. But coming to our main focus, that is urea formaldehyde resins. Basically urea formaldehyde resins, these are the synthetic resins derived for the reaction from the reaction of urea, that is carbamide. If you know the structure of urea, we shall study the structure of urea in the next slides too. But basically it is like a carbonyl group is attached to two amino groups, so it reacts with formaldehyde and its polymers. So talking about the first report of these urea based, you can say, formaldehyde resins, it was reported in a patent by Johns in 1918, and they disclosed that these materials can be prepared by heating urea with the you can say that with commercial formalin or formaldehyde, almost the same thing, and which suggested the use of resultant viscous solution because these they came out to be very viscous and they had very high density, and we already talked that we call them resins because of this high viscosity. So this viscous property, basically it is responsible for their adhesiveness, so they can also used as adhesive and as impregnants for fabrics. So they are also used in the fabrics too. Talking about urea formaldehyde resins, so why they are important, but you can say that basic characteristics are very minute thing that are very important for a very significant characteristics of these urea formaldehyde resin, that they are very highly cross-linked polymers, and highly cross-linked it makes them thermoset polymers. So they are insoluble because when there is cross-linking, so everything sets the basis of the next properties, like cross-linking make them thermosets, and also it makes them insoluble in most of the solvents. So these are infusible materials, they have got low molecular weight. When we talk about low molecular weights, that basically in the process when we start the reaction, so they have low molecular weight, but by modifying the reaction conditions, putting the same resin to the second stage, we can increase the molecular weight too. So these are the basically, if you compare these materials with the other, you can say that melamine type, you can say melamine formaldehyde resin. So these are basically cheaper, they have light colors, and they are odorless, almost odorless you can say, and they are resistant to electrical tracking. But though they don't have very good, you can say that water resistant, something like that, and they have very good adhesion. We already talked about their high viscosity, and they have low cost and high curing rate. Here is a general, you can say that this is how we talk about that how does urea formaldehyde resins look chemically. So this is when urea, we talked about this structure, that urea it consists of one carbonyl group, it is attached to two amino groups, and then these amino groups together we call it urea. Urea reacts with formaldehyde, and then under heat we get this type of carbamide. So we have this carbonyl attached to two NH groups here. So basically it's a amide here. So after polymerization we get this urea formaldehyde resin, where the repeating unit is CH2 NHCO NHCH2. So using this repeating unit, it makes a big network. So here you can see in the other figure that is a highly cross-linked type of polymer. So this type of polymer, it is basically the cross-linking also imparts gives its very important and interesting features. So there is another way by which we can show that how this urea can be represented like this, that urea reacts with three molecules of formaldehyde, because nitrogen has capacity to react with two like nitrogen amine. Basically this amino group can react with two more formaldehydes. So on one side it reacts with two, and the other side it makes this methyl ol type moiety. So this type of reaction, after the you can say the elimination of water, that is a condensation reaction you can say, so we get this amine type of compound. Basically when amino group and aldehyde, they react together, so this is very basic reaction that we get this type of shift basis. So in the you can say that in the excess of these formaldehyde, so we get this methyl ol type of substituents too. So in this case, when we have this shift type of base or NCH2 bond, CH2 double bond, then it gets attacked by another urea, and that's how the reaction, you say that the reaction repeats itself, because on one side we have this methyl, the other side we have this another urea is attached here. So again this NH2, it can undergo like the loss of water, and it reacts with another molecule of urea, and then we get a network of, like you can say that this resin is a highly, in the end we get this highly cross-linked resin. So what we have in here is that when we talk about the raw materials of urea formaldehyde resins, so from the name, as it was suggested, that it is formed by using by reacting urea with formaldehyde. But because when we talk about a process like that is carried out industrially or commercially, so we have to make sure that we have the commercially available starting materials, or you can say that if we can synthesize the starting material or sell at a cheap price, then it is very beneficial to carry out that process. So in case of urea, when we say that urea, then it is a white crystalline basically compound with melting point of almost 132.6 degrees Celsius, and it is highly soluble in water. But this was about urea and how we can prepare urea commercially. There are two possible ways, and one of that is that we have urea to form urea we can use carbon dioxide and ammonia. So because these both are like we can use an autoclave. Like autoclave is basically a you can say that a closed container that can is a silver or you can say that steel autoclaves are also available. So these are closed containers that can also sustain very high temperature or very high pressures. So in case of we have to synthesize this urea, so we use liquid carbon dioxide and ammonia in silver lined autoclaves. Why we are using silver? It can also act as a you can say that catalyst, and also it is very you can say that it is inert for the reaction. So at temperatures in the range of 135 to 195 degrees Celsius and high pressure, that is almost 22 to 30 atmospheric pressure, the reaction proceeds and we get ammonium carbamate as an intermediate. So this intermediate decomposes to ammonia and water. So this basically 40% to almost 60% conversion is attained, and then the unreacted feedstock they are returned to the compressors, and these urea obtained. This is the one possible way, and the other possible way is that we can also obtain urea from calcium cyanamide. So these cyanamides react with acids, and we get ammonium cyanamide, and then this ammonium basically this ammonium cyanide, or you can say it reacts with water, and after hydrolysis we get ammonia. Continuing the talk about raw materials. So urea and formaldehyde or formalin, these are the basic raw materials of urea formaldehyde resin. We talked about that how urea can be synthesized, and formalin can be synthesized easily to commercially. So moving to the synthesis of the raw material itself, like formaldehyde and resins, formaldehyde and urea. Basically in this amino plastic manufacture, formalin is used almost 36 to 37% weight by weight percentage. As in the case of phenolic resin production, formalin with both high and low depending upon the needs of the manufacturer, that what kind of material do we need, because methanolic content also is very important. The methanolic content of formalin, if there is low methanolic content of formalin, this is it increases its reactivity, but it is also less stable and must be used soon after its preparation. So methanol is basically used to control the reactivity of formalin too. For this reason, some resin manufacturers, because it is formalin stays less stable in the absence of methanol, so for this thing some manufacturers prefer to use formalin with high methanolic contents. It is almost 7 to 10%. Coming to the formaldehyde, and like it is basically a gas with you can say that it's a natural gas. Basically methane can be used to synthesize methanol, and this methanol can in turn convert to formaldehyde. And then when we talk about urea, then we already discussed that it is the white crystalline powder. So natural gas can be used to synthesize ammonia, or ammonia plus carbon dioxide, because ammonia and carbon dioxide can form urea, as we discussed in the previous slide. Okay, when we talk about the you can say the synthesis of urea formaldehyde resin. So the synthesis of this cross-linked polymer itself is the resinification. The resinification involves the reaction of urea with formaldehyde, but there are other processes involved in this polymer synthesis, or this you can say that this material too. So those other processes are like they is involved, we can say it as molding, in which we add different type of materials in this polymer to mold their properties and to adjust them according to our needs or demands. And in the other case we have processing, and there is another process we call it as processing. So So the overall these type of modification or these type of steps are needed to make a polymer as a whole to fit in according to the needed applications. So when we talk about resinification or resin formation, so there are mainly two steps are involved. That is, one of them is called methylolation, you can say that, because it's a combination of methylene and OH group, so we call it methylolation. And the other one is we call it as condensation. So these are basically resins are prepared by two-stage reaction. The first stage involves the reaction of urea and formaldehyde under neutral or mildly alkaline condition. So under these conditions it produces mono or dimethyl ureas. So ratio of mono to dimethyl urea, you can say such compounds, it depends on the urea to formaldehyde ratio. So how much we are the ratio of this urea to formaldehyde, it can be adjusted. So this by adjusting it we can control the ratio of mono to dimethylol compound. That is because formaldehyde has to react with urea. So on one side of ammonia react with formaldehyde, this is the mono methylol, and the dimethyl is like the both of these NH2, or you can say that both are these protons, they are removed from there and then they are substituted by methylol, and we call it as dimethylol compound. So in that case the ratio is basically adjusted by the ratio by the monomer, you can say the feed of the reactants. So it is important that there should be enough formaldehyde to allow some dimethyl urea formation. And this reaction is the initial reaction, and basically this is a exothermic reaction, and according to this one we get low molecular weight or low viscosity product. The second step is the secondary reaction of, the same reaction that we did in the first step is the same reaction occurs in the second step, that is the reaction of urea with formaldehyde. But the difference is that in this case these methylol groups and the methylol groups on the chain ends of initial reactant product, they can react with other methylol groups to give ether linkages or with the amine groups to form methylene linkages. So we can also we shall see the basically chemical changes we are talking here in the next slides too. So what you have to remember is that in the condensation process there is a removal of water to form these ether linkages, and also there can be you can say that when methylene linkages can also form. So this case we get the high molecular weight or high viscosity product. This is further explanation of this methylolation, that is how urea reacts with formaldehyde, and then by the splitting of water I can say that here we have this methylol group. So because of the formation of this methylol we call it as methylolation. So in this case, the first case we say that monomethylol is formed, in the second case there is dimethylolation, and the third case there is trimethylol urea is formed. So this trimethylol urea, after this trimethylol urea we set the basis to react with another urea molecule. So this is how this step is called methylolation. Next step, if you see that in the condensation step, this urea reacts with they are like this is the same step like in the first methylolation, but in here we have urea that reacts with formaldehyde, and then it is converted to monomethyl urea, and then monomethyl urea reacts with another molecule of formaldehyde, and we get dimethyl methylol urea, and then condensation of methylol urea. This is the basic step, that is the condensation of methylol urea. In this methylol urea, that is one monomethylol urea react with urea, and here we get this type of intermediate where we have there is ether, you can say that this methylene linkage is formed, because after the reaction of urea and monomethyl urea we get ethylene linkages. But if we have this you say that dimethylurea. If dimethylurea reacts with another molecule of dimethylurea, then in this case condensation, that is the removal of water, happens, and here we get ether linkage. Because you see that in case when there is a removal of water molecule by the reaction of N and OH, then we have this, you can say that here we have water molecule is removed and we get methylene linkage. But in case where we have the reaction of two methylol quinates, then we get ether linkages here. Furthermore, in case of trimethylolurea, we only have 3 methyl groups, and then it can also react with another monomethylurea, and then water molecule is removed and another formaldehyde molecule is removed, and here we get methylene linkage. So this is how branched resin polymer is formed. So these are the 3 ways in which molecular weight is highly increased, and in the long run we get a network or a you can say that highly branched polymer is formed, or you can say highly cross-linked polymer is formed. Starting from the UF, you can say that urea formaldehyde molding materials, that which kind of materials can be used to adjust their properties. Basically, the molding powder that we used in the processing, you can say molding process, they consist of many different ingredients, starting from the resin, filler, pigment, hardener, or we also call it as accelerator, stabilizer, plasticizer, and also lubricants are used. So we shall discuss that how these different materials or the different ingredients change the properties, or why they are used in the molding process. So the first stage of resin preparation, what we do is to dissolve urea into 36% formalin solution, which has been adjusted, and the pH of this process is maintained at 8. If the pH is dropped, you can say that the pH goes low, so we have to adjust the pH for the process, because to maintain the process. Sometimes in the start we adjust the pH using caustic soda, but if the pH is dropped again during the process, we can also adjust it by the addition of small quantities of hexamine. Basically, these are the you can say these are the materials that don't, like hexamine, it doesn't affect this reaction chemistry so much. So what we do that when we carry out this reaction, we already said that these are carried out in some autoclave type reactors. Autoclaves are basically stainless steel type materials. They are enclosed, you can say that closed containers that have high that are able to sustain very high pressure, or you can say that very high temperature they can withstand. So the heating is done in glass line or stainless steel reactors for about 90 minutes, and it can be carried out at about 40 degrees Celsius for 30 minutes. The ratio of urea to formaldehyde is basically, it is kept under 1 to 1.3 or 1 to 1.5. Formaldehyde is slightly used in excess to make sure that urea's NH2 groups, they are used by they are almost used in this case. So this is how the resin is important. Resin is prepared by using additives like you can say that reactants like urea and formaldehyde. Coming to the filler, that what fillers do and which kind of fillers we use. Basically, in case of fillers, what we say that fillers are the added to polymer because they reduce the cost and improve the properties. So they are used to adjust the properties of the polymer. So what they do, that they enter the spaces or voids in the material, like they can modify their characteristics by occupying the space or voids in the polymer material itself. So which kind of materials are used as a filler in case of UF materials? So in here we can use wood pulp can also be used, wood floor can also be used. So what they do, that they can also adjust the colors of the polymers. So wood floor is basically significantly cheaper, so it is used unpigmented when it is unpigmented, so it gives molding some brown color and somewhat transparent in thin sections. We can also adjust the color by using the other type of materials, like to mask the brown color, heavy pigmentation is commonly used. So this you can say that materials like wood pulp, or you can say that wood floor, or even cellulose material is also used. So there are also pigments used in the UF molding compositions. Why these pigments are used? Because pigments can give colors to the polymer base, and these type of pigments basically they should be like they shouldn't react with the polymer itself, and they also shouldn't react with any solvents which the moldings might come in contact. And in addition to pigments, we can also use hardener, or you can say that hardener or accelerator type of compounds are also used here. So basically what hardeners do, that hardeners increase the rate of curing. Curing is basically that how a polymer hardens or becomes stiff. So curing is some process that controls the stiffness or the hardness of the material. So hardeners are the materials. They some materials that are used as hardener are ammonium sulfamate, or ammonium phenoxyacetate, or ethylene sulfide, and trimethyl phosphate. So they they are used in almost 0.2 to 2% ratio. So they help to increase the rate of cure, and also what they do, that they function by decomposing at molding temperature to give an acidic body that will accelerate the cure rate. So this acidic body basically is involved in the reaction. So these are basically you can say that latent acid catalyst. So there are some examples. So this is how hardeners are used. Talking about stabilizers like hexamine. In case of hexamine, we already discussed that hexamine was also used to adjust the pH of the material, and also these stabilizers, they help for the cure rate, and also related time for flow is it also controlled by these stabilizers. Plasticizers are used as special grades of molding powders. What they do is that they help to control the condensation of resins, and materials like glycerol, toluene ether, they are used for this purpose, and these improve the flow of these polymer grades. Also there are lubricants used. Lubricant concentration is kept around 1%, and these materials, these are used like some materials are oxidized paraffin wax, or sulfonated castor oils are used, and also there are materials like metal stearates. Like these are basically lubricants, are some you can say that these are some waxes, or you can say these are lipid type of compounds. And this is how we can summarize the overall role of these molding materials. That in case of commercial urea formaldehyde molding process, these different powders, they can help to control the properties by using we can vary the filler nature, and we can adjust the properties, and also ease the flow. It depends upon the how dense or how viscous the material is. So the speed of cure is also partly related with the ease of flow, and these can be controlled by using different hardeners or stabilizers. They by varying the nature of hardener or stabilizer, and also by varying the ratio of these hardener or stabilizers. The type of grind and the presence or absence of plasticizers, they can also control these materials properties. This is the reference book I used for this lecture. If you go through this book, and you shall find this urea formaldehyde resin, and go through that properly, and you will find all this topic very comprehensively mentioned there. And I have an assignment that we have already studied the different materials used in molding powder. So you have to make a list of these molding materials, and also enlist the roles in few lines, or you can say that few words. Try to summarize the role of these molding materials.